What is financial literacy? Just think about this for a minute. Is it learning financial terms? Is it knowing investment abbreviations? Is it developing the ability to make financial choices, or is it all of the above? So do most of you say all of the above? So I personally, in my opinion, and we can ask these fine women here, I don't really think if you know financial terms that it really helps you that much. And definitely if you know investment abbreviations, that's nice for going to a party and whipping out those initials. But I don't think it really helps you. You know, when I became a certified financial planner, a CFP, the thing that I thought was the most fun was integrating all the parts of a person's financial life. It wasn't being the person who knows estate planning or the person who knows insurance or the person who can make a budget. It was integrating, see how all the pieces work together, sort of like a big pie that you're in control of, and that you have to realize what you do in one area impacts the other areas. And so to me, it's the integration of all these things, and I think it's developing the ability to make financial choices, because I think that's all, or could be, you know, the goal of everybody here. I mean, you don't just want to be able to say CPA, you know, you really want to be able to use these to make the best choice for your own life. So that's how I would answer that. Anybody have another idea? Sound good to you? Okay. So it helps you by looking at the whole pie. It can give you exposure to the components of taking care of yourself, and there's a good goal, right? So if you're not financially literate, or if you're financially illiterate, then you may not have an emergency fund. 1/3 of adults in the United States have no savings. 44% of people, your neighbors, Americans, can't cover even a $400 emergency. So you can see how if something happens to your car, your stove, your roof, a tree in your yard, or maybe you don't have a yard because you're in a Manhattan apartment, but you know what I mean. $400 to a lot of us, well, you write the check, but 44% of our neighbors can't cover that kind of an emergency. And they may also not be prepared for retirement. And when people retire in America today, they may have $10,000 or less for the next 30 years of their lives, which isn't this all shocking? I think it's shocking. What if they have a setback? What if they're fired? What if they're laid off? What if they're facing a medical emergency? Then what are they going to do with less than $10,000? How will that last them till their 90s? So people who are financially illiterate are less likely to have Social Security. And I think most people here have Social Security, but groups that are less likely to have Social Security are widows, immigrants, poorer people, uneducated people who haven't even finished high school, and people who've been irregular workers. You know, they don't go to someplace every Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and so it doesn't add up a lot. And then they may have less Social Security. There could be some of those people who are getting Social Security, but it could be in the hundreds instead of in the thousands. And for a lot of other people, this is an important part of their retirement. So up to 15% of Americans will never have any Social Security. So it's kind of shocking, and we want to take better care of ourselves. 1/5. So on the other hand, 1/3 of adults with children who are under age 18 would like to see those kids go to college, but they've done nothing to start to prepare for that. And, you know, maybe we're brought up on too many fairy tales. Something will happen between now and college. Somebody will help us, or my kid will be the best violin player in America, and the college will recognize that and give him a scholarship, or a violin foundation will give him a scholarship. But, you know, it's best to prepare to take care of yourself. If something wonderful happens in your life, we can add that on to how you are and how you're taking care of yourself. But if nothing good happens in that way, you could be in for a terrible shock. So this is an interesting statistic. People in America grade themselves on financial literacy as a C, a D, or an F. And that's very surprising, because if you say to people, you know, there are excellent drivers, there are medium drivers, there are rotten drivers, which are you? 90% of people say I'm an excellent driver, and you wonder who that leaves in all those other categories. But not in financial literacy. 41% in the US grade themselves C, D, or F. So no A's or B's around, or maybe there are some, but not in that group. And Forbes magazine has said that 2/3 of Americans cannot pass a basic financial literacy test. And we're going to see one in a few minutes and see what you think. But, but you don't have to tell me. So one of my favorite stories is a few years ago, I was called by some students who were seniors at Yale University. And I really loved that I was called not by the university, not by the staff, but by students who said, we're about to graduate and we cannot leave here until we know something about our finances. And I was so impressed, and they said, will you come? Well, you know, what can you say? So I went. And they were really wonderful. And it's a wonderful time to try to educate kids. And you can even educate younger kids. When my son was in 5th grade, his teacher asked me and Lou if we would come and give a financial talk to 9 and 10-year-olds. And so we did that, you know, as a parents thing. And those kids were so tough. Oh my gosh. They were raring to go. They said, what if I had bought an oil stock years ago? You weren't even born years ago. Like, when would you have bought this? So, and they were really incredible. And they were ripe. They were ready to learn. They wanted this knowledge, and they didn't get it. And so right now, about 5% of states, 5 states have mandatory financial education in their high schools. Some states are working on it now, and we think within another year there'll be 21 states that'll have it. That still leaves 29 states that don't have it. And I don't know what it's made up of, and you know, I don't know. There are different people preparing it in each state because education is left to the states. So I think we're missing a great opportunity with our kids, and we're doing a disservice. We'll teach them, you know, how to cross the street. We'll teach them how to be nice people. We'll teach them many things. We'll see that they go through school. But we're not teaching them how to be financially literate or how to be financial adults. And I think that that's a missed service, and I wish we could do better at that. So April is Financial Literacy Month. I'm guessing that nobody here knew that. So what that has meant, and it's been for 10 years, so you've had time to get used to it, but nobody told you, right? It's not important. So what that has meant for a long time is that people like us are asked by their associations if they'll go educate a group or something for a day or maybe for an hour, and then there's no follow-up. So it's like one and done. So how is this helping the people? You know, maybe it's getting them interested at best, but not really giving them a lot of good tools they could use. So things are changing very slowly, if at all. And you've all heard that credit card debt is, you know, a big symptom of our society, and it's difficult to catch up. But according to Forbes, the average debt held by an American is $16,000, and people just pay the minimum each month. And at that level, it could take 10 years to pay off, and of course, costs much more. So another of my favorite stories is a young woman called me up one day, and she told me that her brother was graduating from law school, and he had just accepted a great job at a law firm, and he'd be getting a lot of money, and he immediately wanted to live like all the lawyers who had been at the firm 20 years or so, and he wanted to rent this big apartment that cost a lot of money and all these things. And he had all this education debt. He had credit card debt, and she was very, very worried about him. And she asked if we if she could give him a gift certificate to our firm, which I don't think anybody's asked before or since. But, we were very happy to have him for a few sessions and discuss his living conditions and his education debt and all that. And he seemed interested. He came. That's a good start. He seemed interested. And so I don't know what's happened to him since, but he was off to a good start. So people generally like instant gratification, and that's difficult to change because it's no fun to put money away for future purchases or for your retirement. You're in your 20s, you're in your 30s, and you think, why should I do that? That's no fun. But don't manage your money like a recent client of ours. We had a client who came in the other day, and he said he had been in the same job for 40 years. And when he started in the job, he chose some funds for his money, and he hasn't looked at it since. And I'm thinking of all the wars we've been in, of all the presidents we've had, of the inflation we've had, of the deflation we've had, of the markets up and the markets down. And he's in the same place for 40 years. And he said, what do you think? Well, can I tell you a little at a time? Don't want to scare you. But I like to tell people, if you get a windfall, a bonus, a birthday gift, whatever, you wrote a book and you were expecting that much money, put most of it away for a major expense that you have now or you're going to be having in the future, but always enjoy a little now. You're a human being. You deserve a little fun. You want to do a little bit of that, and so why not? You should use a little of it. Don't deprive yourself completely, but remember to save most of it. So there's one thing that worries me a lot. Have you read about this in the papers, that there's a trend to people who want to retire like in their 30s or 40, and they save, and their friends tell them it can't be done, and they say, yes, I've accumulated all this money and I'm doing it. And they're retiring 38. They may live to 98, 88, I don't know. And they think they've saved enough. And I think that's really, really scary. If they think they've saved enough at 40 and it looks great, and it still looks good at 50, it's going to pale at 60, it's going to be terrifying by 70, and they're going to say, well, I didn't know milk costs so much, I didn't know rent costs so much, and now I don't have much money left, and how am I going to get another 20, 30 years? I think that's a really not good thing. So 60 to 80% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And I just spoke to somebody in their 30s who regretted not saving in a 401k or in an IRA and contributing to retirement plans, and she can't walk it back, but she can still do well. She's young enough to still do well, but it's very important. So let me give you the 3 questions that were on a financial literacy test. It's about if you had money in a savings account and you got a little bit of interest per year, after 5 years, how much do you think you would have? Would you have more, less, or exactly $102? I don't know if you want me to give you what I think is the best answer now. I don't know if you want to think about it and tell me later, or if this is very private, somewhat private, not private. We hear more and less. It's got to be one or the other. What do you think? More, less, or exactly the same? Or, 102, not the same. Well, I go with more. But look at this one. Imagine that the interest rate on your savings account was 1% per year and inflation was 2%. You're answering already? Would you have more than today, less than today, or the same as today? You'd have less, right. And here's the last one. Buying a single company stock usually provides a safer return than a stock mutual fund. True or false? Ooh, you're all sure of that one. And of course, it is false. So you're right. So you did well on that test, better than most Americans. So here are some recommendations for you. And maybe some of you are there, and maybe you want to pass it on to somebody else. To become a little more financially literate, you could join an investment club. You know what those are. You put in a little bit of money, you do a little bit of research, and you watch the stocks along with other people. You could belong to AAII.org, the American Association of Individual Investors. They have a special now for $49. They have speakers in all the major cities in the US. They have a national conference. They have great things to read, papers. It's a good way to learn at whatever level you're at. Another one is to read one financial book a year. I might have said more, but I didn't want to scare everybody. So one financial book a year could be good. And subscribe to one financial magazine a year. It could also help you. Become familiar with your circumstances. Be part of the family financial discussion. Don't leave it to anybody else, and you're going to come out ahead. You know, it's really important to be part of it, know what's going on. I do have people who come in, maybe they've been widowed, maybe there's a change in their lives, and they say, I don't know who my broker is, I don't know who my lawyer is, I don't know who my accountant is, I don't know where my money is, you know. So it's better to be paying attention. And ask questions, always ask questions, they're all good. And you know, it's interesting to answer those questions for people, and you should never apologize. Do you know that women apologize a lot? Oh, I hate to bother you, but this is silly, but, you know. Do guys say that? Reza, do guys say that? And, you know, pay it forward. Interest your children and grandchildren in financial concepts. Let them know what you know. And look at this one. To me, this is a shocker, and I hope you can all see it. This is where the U.S. is in global financial literacy. You see where we are? Now, having been born in Canada, I'm very happy Canada's number 5, and Ricky is a Canadian. So, you know, and we're number 14. Why should a country like us be number 14? And then all the Scandinavian countries are at the top. It must mean something. So, and Israel. We have a woman born in Israel here. So, you know, I think if you do these things to take care of yourself, you're going to have a good outcome. Thank you.